Righto, Muddy Miners. We are not here today when you're listening to
Friday.
it. We are possibly dying in bed after our event, but this is Mr. Joe Lowry. Part 2 is up our sleeve. Now, part 2, I think we start on, I guess, the real intricacies of DLE.
Yep, we got into the DLE, and then we got into
Is it going to bloody work or not?
Yep, we spoke about Exxon's, movements in and around the area. We spoke about Sedimentary projects.
Thacker Pass.
Thacker Pass, and all the other ones on the fringes.
Rio Tinto's Jada. Yeah.
Yep.
And then a bit into the downstream world as well.
Yeah, a bit on hydroxide, carbonate and the like.
Good. Great 101 for all the spodumene fans that aren't as up on the curve like me about everything else that isn't spodumene and lithium. So
There's a lot of other supply out there. Which
That's it.
We're otherwise. Thank you, Joe. Always a pleasure to have you on the show.
he froths on it. He's new. I reckon he's got a poster of us on his bedroom wall or something. Like a bloody he's our fanboy.
If not, we'll send him one.
Yes, and mate, I can't wait for Liontown to be bloody breaking spodumene underground. And you know what's going to be paramount to Liontown's success?
These?
Flow of operation. Have a look at them. Here, donated by the Sandvik folk. Jumbo, look at that. You need those steels turning. Look at that. You bogger, you need the bloody... But you take the jumbo away, the bogger's got nothing to do.
No.
You take the bogger away,
Yep.
the truck's got nothing to do.
Yep.
You know what you can take away that will mean the jumbo's got nothing to do?
Matty Michael from operating the jumbo.
Ground support. Ground support. And if you take DSI away from your operation, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. You're just paying everyone for nothing.
There's no lithium to speak of.
There's no Liontown stock price goes to zero. Effectively, if DSI if you don't have ground support. That is how important ground support is to the mining industry.
But I couldn't have put it better.
Why would, and if you want ground support, you need reliable supply, wouldn't you go to the OG ground support provider?
There's only one place to go.
DSI, Jesus Christ. Like, I'm sweating thinking about what it would mean for an operation if they didn't have ground support. If you have DSI, reliable ground support of every shape and form, just take the easy option.
Chuck another DSI order.
Just chuck another DSI order, chuck a few extras in to guarantee that you've got ground support. It's all galvanised, doesn't rust. It's all good. Bloody, it does rust after jumbo bloody tears a new arsehole in it with the steel, but it's fine.
But decades later, because you need it to be good decades later, still bloody good.
I would assume that Liontown and Burncut are using DSI, and that has just given that project so much more hope.
It'd be crazy not to. Right?
I'll put me...
Matty, the way you articulated the importance of ground support there, you actually simultaneously explained why jumbo operators get paid the most on the mine. Because it's like, you are the bottleneck.
Well, maybe DSI should be getting paid more than jumbo operators, because jumbo operators couldn't do anything without DSI providing the ground support. Just like, I would say, one of the most important businesses in the mining industry, DSI. Mate, ground support in all shapes and forms, splitties, MDXs, MD bolts, posi bolts, bloody mesh of all shapes and forms. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I think I'm going to ring up DSI after this and just say thank you.
Just put an order in yourself, mate.
Just thank you for keeping the mining industry alive.
Send them a Christmas card.
DSI. Yeah, I'll send him a carton of Dingo. No,
Yeah.
I don't want to give it away. Jeez, I love Dingo at the moment.
Yeah.
Love your work.
You know who else you love?
Who do I love, Trav?
If I
Let me guess,
describe
it's
someone,
either Rhino Sullivan or Seamus Murphy. It is Seamus Murphy, correct?
It's Seamus.
Is
Who,
it?
by the way, is not Irish but has the name Seamus. How does that happen?
I would like to hear anyone, like, if anyone in the industry actually doesn't like Seamus Murphy. I think it would be impossible. I would put $1 million on it. Like, he would be the most loved guy in the industry, I reckon, especially in the world of exploration.
Yeah.
What a genuinely bloody great bloke. Wouldn't you want your exploration recruitment, soil sampling and anything like hire of bloody RTVs to get through shit
Core
ground?
cutting, core storage.
Wouldn't you want to, it's like I compare Seamus to DSI. Like it is the safest bet.
Well, it's kind of like, I think of it as maximizing your probability of exploration success.
Yeah.
Just use Seamus Murphy at any time exploration.
It's an absolute no-brainer. Like, and because we look at obviously, risk-adjusted returns and things like that. Like,
Just maximizing your return and minimizing your risk.
Risk, like if you pretty much have, like, you have no risk adjustment when you have Seamus. Like, Seamus like just de-risks exploration.
And if you just don't want a headache, call them up.
Oh, and like you get to talk to the nicest bloke in the industry. Seamus, Victoria, anytime exploration. Thanks for all your support. And this is genuine. This is 100% genuine.
Everyone's out there looking for quality people. And anytime exploration actually can provide quality people for all of your exploration needs as well.
You're not going to get a quality person from a bad quality owner.
No.
Like good quality owners give good quality people and products. Simple as that. Anytime exploration and DSI.
Speaking of good quality people, we better get to our chat with Joe.
Yes, can't wait.
Let's rip it.
Let's rip it.
We spoke a couple of weeks ago, Joe, briefly about Exxon moving in, and understand that's Oil Field Brines, slightly different to the South American brines at Smackover. But
well, okay, let's be clear about framing this though. When you talk about oil field brines, usually it's about a saltwater solution kind of that's been gone through an oil field process, and they're very low. They're 50 to 75 ppm. What you're talking about in the Smackover with Exxon is them actually drilling for lithium, not using something that was part of an oil field process.
Yeah.
And they've found, and Standard Lithium's doing the same thing. Standards was a special situation because they were using the Smackover. They had already drilled wells. They were producing bromine, and Albemarle does the same thing. This Standard's in El Dorado, Arkansas. Albemarle's in Magnolia, Arkansas. But these are operations that the wells are already drilled. There's no capital costs associated with that. They're making a product that's commercially viable and bromine, and then they just take the brine after that process, take the lithium out and re-inject it. So that can be a much lower ppm lithium. But what Exxon's doing, they're drilling these wells, and they're wells for lithium, but they have a much higher. They're more like Argentina in terms of the lithium content, which was a surprise to a lot of people. But so you have when you talk about brine in North America, you have to have DLE for almost all of it. Silver Peak is a tiny operation Albemarle has, Nevada. It's not a great operation, relatively high cost for a brine operation. But most of what you'll see out of North America is going to require DLE.
Yeah.
But there's two frames for that, though. There's the old oil field brines that are 50 to 75 ppm that you're going to pump out. And then there's some of this much higher lithium containing brine. And when you're talking ppm, it sounds like it's all tiny, but there's a huge difference doing DLE on 50 ppm versus 600 ppm.
Yeah. So let's talk about the oil majors. And I have to say, a company calling themselves Standard Lithium, in a throwback to doing it with oil brines, a throwback to Standard Oil, is pretty hilarious. But these guys going to that part of America, they don't have the operation to use the option to use the ponds because they don't have the physical space, right?
No, it's not space at all. If it rains 50 or 60 inches a year in a place, you can't do ponds. You have to have a relatively arid environment.
Yeah.
And Arkansas does not qualify, nor does Texas. There's a lot of rainfall in those states, so you can't do ponds.
And what do you make of the move that Exxon and the money that they say they're going to pump in and all of it? Obviously, it's a bit part to their much larger core oil operations. But do you look at it as a serious change to the way the market's approaching DLE?
100%. If you're an old guy in lithium, you've been praying for the last 10 years. You're going to church and doing the novena to get somebody like the oil companies or big mining into lithium because they have the balance sheet to really have a go at it without worrying about. I mean, if you have the risk tolerance that an oil company has to have to wildcat, and you can say wildcat, Maddie, if you want to.
Wildcat. Thank you. Cheers. Continue.
That's a whole different mindset, because Exxon has the balance sheet to go learn by doing, and obviously there's an ESG component to this. There's social pressure on oil companies to do a decarbonization and so on and so forth, and I think Exxon's dead serious, and but I do think the CEO didn't really start talking about it until the CEO of Chevron said they were going to get into lithium, and everybody knows Occidental Petroleum's looking at it too. So, and if you go to South America, I mean, I advised YPF, the national oil company in Argentina, 4 or 5 years ago, and I have had other dealings with some of the other petroleum companies in South America. So I think this is a theme. And if you look at brine, they're interested. It's an analogy to what they do anyway: drilling, subsurface, understanding what's going on below the ground, and I don't think you're going to see. I mean, if I was going to advise a big oil company, I'd say get into both. Ultimately, hard rock and brine, but their initial forays are going to be into brine because that's what they're more well suited for.
The oil companies sound just like the billionaires here in WA. They all look at what the other one's doing, and then they say, "Oh, we're piling into lithium now. Let's go."
Trust me, Chris Gina versus Exxon is not even David versus Goliath.
So I want to pick up on some comments from your favorite investment bank. Now, they were talking about what the impact of DLE would be on the cost curve for lithium. And it wasn't what a lot of people here in WA sort of anticipate. It wasn't just dropping the cost curve entirely like we've seen in the nickel market in the last couple of years. It was actually really widening the second and third quartiles of the cost curve. So they're not going to beat, the likes of the Atacama and the Greenbushes. Is that something, I can see a bit of a laugh? What do you think about that?
Well, I think you were reading Goldman right before we started this podcast.
Your favorite investment bank.
Before your head hit the pillow. And I will tell you that if you talk about DLE widening the cost curve for brine, I'll accept that. But lepidolite grossly steepens the cost curve. And at the end of the day, the lithium market doesn't give a rat's ass about whether it's brine or hard rock. I mean, the high point of the cost curve is going to define where price goes. So, and Goldman's chops on understanding DLE are laughable if you go through that report in detail. And I'm not going to get into a tit for tat with the Goldman people on that, but some of the DLE people sent that to me as soon as it was published and said, "Wow, this is amazing that they believe that."
So, do you think the impact of DLE in that near term or in the medium term is under or over appreciated?
We're going to do under and over. Give me your definition of near and midterm.
Let's say in 5 years' time.
I still think in 5 years' time, DLE would be not a huge contributor to lithium supply. I think if you take it out to 7 to 10, then you're talking. But I think just because of just look at the announcements. Nobody's claiming massive DLE operations in 2 or 3 years. This is all a time sequence thing. But I do think it's part of the future. But to go back to Maddie, go ahead.
Oh, just saying, who do you think is going to be the first to crack it on a big scale? Is it going to be like an Exxon?
I think it's going to happen in the Smackover. And it could be standard. It depends on what big is. I mean, let's just say 10,000 tons is kind of the threshold of it's a commercial operation, small commercial operation. Could be standard. It could be Exxon. I have a soft spot in my heart for both. So,
what sort of money are these, oil giants kind of actually allocating towards this sort of technology? Is it like real capital where, or is it kind of like are they taking these kind of bets where they're throwing some money at it, and if it works, it works, but if it doesn't, it doesn't? Like how do you evaluate that?
I think that a big lithium project is a small oil field.
Yeah.
So I don't think it matters, because I think Exxon's going down a path and capital's not going to be a barrier to that path. What the barrier is going along the line of, does it work at this level? Does it work at this level? But I believe they will be all in. If DLE works at 10,000 tons, then that'll just be Katie bar the door, because they can build things fast. I wouldn't be betting against Exxon, especially operating in the part of the U.S. they're operating in. I think it was such a big deal. The governor's on Miss Huckabee is, announcing that Exxon's here and they're drilling, and Arkansas really wants this to happen. And I have a soft spot in my heart for Arkansas. My college roommate's an Arkansas boy, and I spent a lot of time in Arkansas. And I'm actually speaking at they're having a big lithium event in February that I will do a keynote at. So I'm given that, going back to your question, it's still going to take time.
So if you contrast the Smackover to the Atacama, is the big difference it's a bit lower concentration lithium, but a lot deeper, like multi-kilometers depth?
Well, I mean, they still have to prove that out with drilling when you're drilling just for lithium only. I mean, that's the thing. And you can't have the Goldman pricing and make that attractive.
Yeah.
And that's
chucking a
the other
5K
thing.
hole.
Yeah. We're looking at a world where if lithium stays 20 to 30, all the brine guys are happy. Even drilling holes for lithium only, I think they're all happy. But if you go back to a $10,000 a ton world, you don't have enough lithium here to do 30% EV penetration. I mean, that's what Goldman and Morgan miss in all this. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. And if you talk the price down to a certain level, lepidolite goes out the window. Some of your higher cost spod goes out the window, and DLE from places like North America goes out the window too.
Any more on Brian's DLE?
I'm keen to get into sedimentary projects.
I think so. Good old Thacker Pass. I reckon that is the best name ever. I don't know. Thacker Pass, Smacker. I don't know. I'm weighing up which one I like better, but they're both good, I want to say.
Is it as good as Bald Hill?
Bald Hill. Well, how do you say it, JD?
Bald Hill, mate.
Yeah, that's it.
Bald Hill.
Right. Sedimentary lithium, which is and Thacker Pass is the one we'll probably relate it to the most. What is it, Big Joe?
It used to be called clay, and there is a friend of mine named Dr. Tom Benson. He's got advanced degrees from MIT, Stanford, and Harvard. So top that. He's a volcanologist, and all lithium, no matter where it is in the world, is associated with volcanic activity. And I'm sure you boys knew that, but just as a reminder. So, the McDermott caldera is a massive. It could be bigger than the Atacama. in terms of the lithium. Yep. They just haven't drilled it all, and because they're listed both on the New York Stock Exchange and TSX, they can't be saying stuff until they drill that all out.
Where's that again?
But it's in Nevada, near the Oregon border, and it's easy mining. It's like strip coal mining. You just kind of scrape it off, and we got old videos that when we did a podcast with those guys, you put it in what looks like a bong, and you just let it separates really easily.
JD's the man to talk to about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Anyway, it hadn't been done before. And if you go back to when they first were looking at Western Lithium had what's now called Thacker Pass. They called it Kings Valley back in those days. Lithium was selling for $5,000 a ton. They wanted to use a hard rock flow sheet because they didn't know any better. And I was always panning it on my commentary. And then all of a sudden, my bright friends from Lithium Americas got a hold of it, and they put a different flow sheet on it. And I think it's going to work. It's going to be a very high capital, and I won't get into those numbers because I can't talk about that. But it's going to be high capital, but it's going to be very reasonable cost, and it's in America, which makes it attractive to the U.S. government and the DOD and all those sorts of people. So big tons, lower grade, but close. It's not. It's not lower grade. It's higher than the Atacama.
But lower than a hard rock spodumene, for instance. Close to surface, so all like free dig material.
Yeah,
it's just like
you're just scraping it off. You're not mining. I mean, that was the whole thing in terms of like the protesters would show the super pit that they downloaded from Google Images, and oh my God, it's gonna be awful. But and knowing these guys pretty well, the whole crew are Tesla driving environmentalists, man. I mean, these are not like the evil empire that the people that were trying to prevent it from going, getting approved. It's a very responsible group of people. And yes, I do own shares in the company, so you can judge me for that.
So the gripe, if there is one that people have on these projects, is that it hasn't been done yet on a large scale. So they've run the pilot plants.
100%.
There's there's a couple other projects around there, Sonora and Ioneer's project as well. But I mean, I'm keen to hear what you think about the flow sheet, given that is the big risk. And they've already started constructing the thing. It's, we wouldn't go into the numbers, but it's a big capex for phase one of this project. So I'm keen just to hear your thoughts on the flow sheet and where your sort of concerns sit.
Well, I think I have been in their tech building in Reno multiple times. They have every unit operation you can do in that facility. And it's like any lithium project. There is always execution risk on building something, but I don't have concerns about the process technology at all.
Why is that?
Because I've seen it. I've seen the operation. I've seen every unit operation work, and it's a matter of scale, and so it's just like to me. It's just like hard rock has become plug and play. Okay. I mean, you can have cock-ups with execution, but people will talk about, hard rock's pretty simple, blah, blah, blah. I don't think it's just one of those things where, well, nobody's done sedimentary, so oh my God, we better worry about it, and that's fine. I know the people involved; they've done lithium, and I don't have a lot of angst about it. It's anytime you're doing a major build, you have timing issues that could come to fore. But, and I'll also say the United States wants this to happen desperately from a governmental perspective.
And that's what I really want to get into as well, because this is a, United States domiciled project. How much of an advantage could the IRA, or is the IRA proving in terms of, funding, upfront CapEx, potential OpEx, tax breaks and the like?
Well, I mean, I can't comment on when the DOE loan's going to happen. I'm pretty sure, I think that will happen. He also had GM go all in with them, with their commitment. So, I also think it's just, if this didn't happen, nothing will happen in America.
So what's the biggest risk to the flow sheet, do you think?
Well, to your point on flow sheet too, Matty, remember Rio Tinto's Jadar deposit in Serbia? So that was a sedimentary one. And
How could we forget?
Before the pin got pulled on that, Rio Tinto committed to spending $2.4 billion on it. So even though there's some novelty and all that sort of stuff, someone like Rio Tinto was prepared to throw a massive dosh at it.
Yeah.
So,
By the pin getting pulled, you mean Djokovic coming into Australia?
Oh yeah. Oh Jesus! Why didn't he just take the jab? Anyway, what are the biggest risks? Is it recovery? Is it acid consumption? What are the biggest risks to that?
Well, I mean, I think
sheet?
the big sulfuric acid plant was a concern of people. I mean, that's what people are talking about. Oh my God, you have to build this massive sulfuric acid plant, but it isn't like it hasn't been done. So it's the typical narrative when you get into lithium that if it isn't just something that's copy and paste, people want to criticize it. And I'm not going to sit here and be the sedimentary apologist. I believe it'll happen. I've got 7 figures of my own money in it. So I believe.
And what does, if Thacker Pass works, where does it open up a lot more sedimentary operations?
I think it opens up more and more of Thacker Pass, that area, the McDermott caldera, and I think that will take years for them to do. And the problem you have with Ioneer's a boron project with associated lithium. Let's just cut to the chase. And it is no Thacker Pass. And I'm sorry for all you ASX punters that have money in Ioneer. Bacanora is a little different in Gangfen. Gangfen is interested in Bacanora because they knew the government wasn't going to allow them, the U.S. government wasn't going to allow them to be a partner in Thacker Pass. So the closest thing they could do was Bacanora, but now they have to deal with the Mexican government. And that's, in my mind, probably not going to happen anytime soon just because of the Mexican nationalization rhetoric and all that.
So take away your bias that you've got shitloads of shares in this. What is sedimentary lithium? How do you rate that? If it, let's say hypothetically, sedimentary DLE and evaporation
Dude, it's soft
continues.
Rock. Just be balanced.
Not spodumene.
Hard rock, soft rock, brine.
And so let's say in the future, in a decade's time, all of it is working and proven. Where does sedimentary sit on a lucrative project side of things? Is it going to be better? Are you better to have a good sedimentary to a brine?
No, cost-wise, sedimentary is maybe in the second quartile. The left-hand side of the second quartile, it might not be in the first quartile, depending on how much brine's done.
Yep.
But you also have to appreciate that from a geopolitical perspective, it's in America. and it's big. And that's kind of what you want. In once the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, you only have to deal with one landowner. I mean, look at something like a Piedmont, which JD, you asked me about Piedmont, and when I landed in Seoul, I had a email from the CEO of Piedmont, and he was not happy about some of the things I said. So, shout out to you, Keith.
We had an interesting chat in our time in Sydney with another CEO who wasn't too happy with comments of yours as well on a company that's been mentioned today.
And who would that be? Come on.
We can't give away all
You
the
can
fun.
edit it out.
We'll chat off the air afterwards, Joe.
Because I'll forget to edit it out. What is that? So if that's
Pissing off people across the lithium universe.
oh, good, nothing like it. Is that so? That Lithium Americas, if that's going to be as big as you say, is that going to attract the attention of a big major?
Well, both of those companies should have been taken out in the last 3 weeks. I mean, if you look at, you had Azure have a higher market cap than Lithium Argentino that has 2 world-class assets and is in production. How much sense does that make? It doesn't make any sense.
And
You can buy Lithium Argentina right now for the capital cost of a mediocre 20,000 ton brine project. It's unbelievable.
And what about Lithium Americas then? Like, who, if it is on the radar for a major, which majors would look at that?
I'm not going to speculate. I mean,
It'd be good if you did.
I think Albemarle has no vision in that regard, and so obviously Tianqi and Ganfeng can't play. So you're really kind of limited to yourself when you talk about majors, and unless you're talking about a major mining company.
Well, do you think it would attract a major mining company?
Well, I think it just shows the lack of vision of the major mining companies, and I would say some of them have addresses right on your doorstep.
Rio Tinto have been making whispers about lithium. They've lost Jadar.
Hey, word on the decline, Joe.
There's a bit of speculation for you.
That'd be good for Joe with all his bloody shares. You're going to flick us some for all these interviews, Cobber, if you don't mind.
And just to touch on the Mexican project once more there, Joe, in terms of how that project stacks up geopolitics and, where it sits aside, I know Mexico had, voiced some ambitions about having a state-owned lithium company as well and all of that. Is the project any good?
I think the project is between Thacker Pass and Ioneer in terms of quality. I think it could be viable, but I think Mexico is just not going to get out of its own way from just pure geopolitics. I mean, Ganfeng wants to get it done. I mean, forget the fact that it's in the middle of drug country. It doesn't matter. But I mean, I can remember the first time my 2 buddies, the chairman and vice chairman of Ganfeng, were going to go down there, and I said, okay, 2 Chinese billionaires are going to drug country in Mexico. That might not be your best play. Maybe you ought to send somebody else under cover of darkness.
Send one of the minions. I'm keen as we sort of get to the end of this. You mentioned the strategic importance of the asset being within the US, and we hear all this stuff about incentives to build gigafactories and, bringing back auto manufacturing to the, Americas and the United States. In terms of, producing the carbonate and the downstream product from a place like Thacker Pass, is there capacity to, are there battery making facilities in America to actually turn that into what Tesla needs? Will they be making that in America, or does it need to leave the country at any point?
Well, first of all, it's what GM needs with regards to Thacker Pass, because GM has 100% call on phase 1 because they put $650 million in. But let's just frame it a little bit differently. If you look at the gigafactory map around the U.S., there's like 25 or so gigafactories that have been announced. 150 gigawatt hour gigafactory wipes out phase 1 of Thacker Pass, because phase 1 of Thacker Pass is 40,000 tons. Use of 0.8 lithium intensity. That's it. So if you're going to do all these big gigafactories, Exxon needs to be successful. Standard needs to be successful, because otherwise you got to bring in WA spot and convert it, or bring up, Argentina or Chilean raw material. That's where this whole thing of the IRA and building the robust battery supply chain starts to break down, is at the raw material end. Because even if the Albemarle was given $90 million as, kind of a olive branch to reopen the Kings Mountain mine. Well, even if Kings Mountain reopens, and that's going to take five years probably, they can do part of the converter plant they want to build just off the back of Kings Mountain. So America's got a long way to go. We'll never be self-sufficient with the vision they have about EV penetration, but we can be on the road to being partially self-sufficient. But something like Thacker Pass is just a beginning. You've got to have a lot of other assets developed, and you can get into the oil field brine thing, but that's a whole different set of technology to get to 50 to 75 ppm brine into low cost world class chemicals. That's going to be a tough slog.
Well, let's break down hydroxide and carbonate. We've talked a lot about lithium carbonate. Now, based on JD's great notes here, thanks JD, your lithium hydroxide is used in your premium batteries, your better range, and your lithium carbonate is used in your LFPs.
I don't like the pejorative of saying premium batteries. High nickel has a set of characteristics, and yes, in the Teslas, the early Teslas, you had to have high nickel. I mean, that's the way Elon wanted to go. But an LFP battery cycles a lot longer than high nickel does. So it's just, how do you parse that?
What makes a good battery? Is it range? Is it charging
exactly.
speed? Yeah. Is it life? Cycles. All of these things matter.
Yeah. So I mean, I would kind of reject out of hand the idea that hydroxide high nickel is the best. It's the best in a certain set of parameters, maybe. But LFP, cyclability, economics, I mean, you look like a rich guy, Matty, so you probably want a high-end vehicle, but there's a lot of people that want a 25.
Few years, mate. Hopefully, I'll be plugging me 7-figure stakes in companies on podcasts too, mate. That's probably one misconception of hydroxide versus carbonate. What are the big misconceptions of hydroxide and carbonate, and probably on the downstream processing side?
Let me just frame this. I was pretty much the original hydroxide bull, because that's what Livent was best at. And I had 100% of the hydroxide market for battery for over a decade. So I'm in if you go way back to the 90s, you used hydroxide to make high purity carbonate to get lithium hexafluorophosphate, which is the electrolyte. So if you go all the way back there, it wasn't for high nickel cathodes because they didn't exist, but it was for the electrolyte. So honestly, when some of even the lithium cobalt oxide people started producing for cell phones, they didn't know any better. So they started using more expensive hydroxide, which I was happy to sell them. And then they figured out that, hey, we could buy carbonate and make the same stuff. So with that bit of background, I think it was in the run up to the Tesla Model S when Tesla started buying cathode from Sumitomo from Panasonic started buying cathode from Sumitomo Metal Mining, and I started supplying the hydroxide to them. They were very picky. It had to be very high quality. I actually Livent's product was the only product that could be used at the time. So that said I had a 60% premium to market on that product. It's a sweet business.
So is the overall thing it's harder to make hydroxide than carbonate? Is that a misconception?
Hydroxide is a more sensitive product to make. It has a shelf life. It's a relatively short shelf life. And so if you have a choice, you would always use carbonate.
So why does it have a short shelf life? What happens to it?
It starts to carbonate. Even when you pack it, any oxygen in the bag, you're going to start getting carbonation immediately. And just so everybody knows, lithium hydroxide is actually LiOH.H2O. So there's a water molecule in there. And it's hydroscopic, I guess, is the simplest way to say it. So
okay, if you let's tie it into the old hard rock and everything. Is there the sensitivity? Is that the challenge of getting to the hydroxide stage? I know Neo Metals had that process to pretty much convert carbonate to hydroxide very easily.
Well, that's what Livent's always done.
Yeah,
is carbonate to hydroxide. It's just easier. It's easier to make a chemical from a chemical. But if you look at it versus taking Greenbush's spodumene, making lithium sulfate, and then making hydroxide, that's good. Greenbush's is the only scenario where hard rock is lower cost than brine to get to hydroxide. But because that was true, then everybody in Western Australia was always the argument that, hard rock's the cheapest route to hydroxide. That's not true. It's only true in the case of Greenbush's.
So if you go off Kemerton and Kwinana in Australia, the hydroxide plants,
that'd be expensive hydroxide out of Kwinana.
Is that
if you can get it?
Is that the so they're what do you think of those downstream processes?
Those are project execution cock-ups is the best way to talk about that. I mean, there's no reason.
Gonna work? Are they going to work eventually?
You're good friends, Joe.
You throw enough money in anything, and ultimately you can get it to work. But you take Tianqi was not a great hydroxide operator in China. Albemarle was not a great hydroxide operator in the United States. So the two people that decided to build chemical plants for hydroxide in Western Australia were bottom of the barrel, might be harsh, but they weren't the best guys. And so I think, and Albemarle's just not a great project executor. Just look at their record across the globe. They bought in to the hydroxide plant that they have in China that originally was, the first qualified to supply Tesla. That's how they got into the business. Their plant that was built with Obama shovel-ready money in Kings Mountain wasn't a great project execution exercise. So, but that's the way the industry started. In the beginning, and this isn't Genesis, this is Lithium's story, the lithium industry was kind of separated into one guy did this, the other guy did that. There was a lot of swapping in between. And FMC, now Livent, made the best hydroxide. And our competitor was better at other things, and they were lower cost at other things. And, now you've got a lithium world that's evolved. And you saw China. I mean, China's 20 years later an overnight success, because at the beginning, when I first started going to China, they couldn't make hydroxide to save their life that was any damn good. Only the low end of the grease market would buy it. Now, arguably, they're better than what Livent can do.
Joe, I'd be interested to hear when we compare MinRes's strategy of, just getting the rock and now, it's evolved and they now have got to the point where they just want to do the mining versus, say, Arcadium Lithium, where they're looking at full integration, brines, downstream chemical processing, all of that sort of stuff. Do you have, a take on what you think is the better strategy there? Or, company specifics aside, whether being good at one thing and just doing that or being vertically integrated is the better strategy?
Yeah, but I think in a sense it's almost a false comparison because what was Chris Ellison good at? Crushing rock and that, and so he can make money all the way across that value chain up to chemicals, which is what he's comfortable with. And then now he's talking about brine, which I find fascinating, and I hope he does it because there's services to be provided to brine producers as well. In a term, what is it? Arcadium or Arcadia?
I think it's Arcadium. I think I missaid it before.
Okay. Another bad name.
Same company.
Doesn't roll off the tongue. I love you, Paul. So I think you've got Livent has been really good at some things and less good at others. Orocobre, now Allchem, really hasn't set itself apart from the also ran field in any aspect. They don't make great carbonate. We'll see what they do with their Japanese hydroxide plant. They do have good assets. Mount Catlin, as we talked about before, maybe the one above the bottom of WA hard rock operations. So if you had to tell me, would you rather line up with Chris Ellison or Arcadium, I would line up with Chris Ellison 100%.
So is the downstream...
And I don't think he's a great operator in hard rock either. Look at Mount Marion. But he's got a vision of what he wants to do, and he moves fast. Arcadium will be glacial in whatever they do. Livent's been talking about the Hombre Muerto expansion for over a decade. And where are they?
Arcadium have spent, I think, just as much on the transaction costs in the merger than Ellison spent on Bald Hill.
I was on the owner's team at Sol de Vida when Galaxy had it.
Oof.
Where are they? Okay. So, am I going to line up with a guy like Chris or probably a 1 + 1 = 1.75 merger? I'm on team Chris, and I know you don't like me, Chris, but that's okay.
So if fast forward a decade, if DLE and the volcanic sedimentaries are all in full flight, where does that leave spodumene?
Oh,
probably your Mount Marions and things like that, your Mount Catlins. Is it gonna?
No, spodumene, you don't have an issue. Even everything that's operating now, I don't know if Bald Hill's actually operating at the present time, but assuming it is, they all continue to operate because what goes is lepidolite, all the crap in ore, DSO type stuff, because it's even look at going from 300,000 tons to 3+ million tons in 10 years. That's a extreme challenge. And then that only gets you part way. Take the next decade. It's going to be well into the 2030s before recycling matters at all, other than recycling the lithium that's delayed to market because of the high scrap levels of the gigafactories. That's another point that people really miss, is that every new gigafactory has really high reject rates for months, and that's just lithium delayed to market. And the more gigafactory startups you have that aren't by the guys who have done it before, it's going to be worse. And lithium is, if you're talking about high nickel, sometimes lithium won't even be taken out. The nickel and the cobalt are much easier. So the circular economy is a long way away.
So with the, I guess, and finish off with the downstream in Australia, the current, with what Tianqi and Albemarle are doing, which hasn't been a good ramp-up success, is there another way hydroxide downstream in Australia could have been done, or is there only the one way to do it, the way they're doing it right now?
Well, I think you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's not that, I mean, all sorts of people all over China are doing it the way Tianqi and Kemerton are trying to do it. So it's just get competent people in. You're going to be higher cost just because of your capital and, you know, the cost involved. But if you want to do that, I mean, I think, I don't know what Mr. Ellison has in mind, but taking it to a non-China lower cost environment might also make sense.
Beauty. Right, lads.
Beautiful. Appreciate your time,
Oh,
Joe.
Big Joe. What a session, mate. What a session. That
Real
was
101 for us.
sensational. Real good.
All right.
Good for, hey, you've made me a better man once again, Big Joe. Love your work. Thanks to the partners, and thanks, Big Mr. Lithium Joe Lowry.
Hey,
Awesome
will
as
you send me
always.
that Gina video?
Oh yeah, mate, I got a whole catalogue of them for you.
Good one, work trap. Righto. Cheers, Big Joe. Righto, there you go. Everyone's had their good fill of Joe Lowry in the last week or so. The big fella.
Absolutely. Much the wiser. DLE, brines, sedimentary projects.
I'll be listening back to it a couple of times.
100% lads.
Hopefully, when you're no longer hungover, Matty.
When are we, you know, in a few years' time, or maybe when we're 50 or 60, we'll be those guys. That, like, we'll be going on the Young Kids podcast, all the whippersnappers, giving back to the industry. Geez, how good's that going to be? Geez, I'll be spinning some yarns about back in the day. Can't wait. Speaking of back in the day, doesn't really apply at all. Our partners. Oh, bloody hell. Let me see if I can rattle them off without bloody
Oh, let's go.
the InvestorHub, DSI Underground, K-Drill, Anytime Exploration Services, McMahon Mining Title Services, Future Proof Consulting, Brooks Airways, Terra Capital. Shit.
KCA Site Services.
KCA! Oh, I'm so sorry, Adam. Oh, my God. I'm so sorry.
It's all right. It's the second worst thing we've done to Adam.
Oh, so sorry. Righto. Hoodaroo.
The information contained in this episode of Money of Mine is of general nature only and does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Before making any investment decision, you should consult with your financial advisor and consider how appropriate the advice is to your objectives, financial situation, and needs.